Welcome to The Get Together! It's our show about the nuts and bolts of community building, and I am your host, Bailey Richardson. I'm a partner at People and Company.
What's up? I'm Kevin Huynh. I'm also a partner at People and Company. We're also gonna be co-authors.
We're gonna be co-authors in August. Having like a book baby.
Talk more about that later.
Okay. Each episode, Kevin and I interview everyday people who have built extraordinary communities about just how they did it. How did they get the first people to show up? How did they grow to thousands more members?
How did they?
We're going to find out. Today, we're talking to Cassandra Lam, one of the co-founders of The Cosmos, an empowering community that connects women and gender non-binary folks who identify as Asian. Cassandra and her co-founder Karen Mok started The Cosmos with a simple question. What does it mean for Asian women to not just survive, but to thrive? To not merely assimilate, but to carve out their own paths.
You normalize the four walls of what you think is possible for yourself. And what you think is possible for yourself is charted out for you based on who you're around and the context you live in. And so there are two ways I think you can go about it. You can either like start decorating those four walls and get really comfortable with them and just like do your best, tell yourself that that's freedom. Or you can keep breaking through and pushing them further and further and further. Yeah. But you can't do that, I don't think, without community.
For their first event, 20 strangers from all around the country flew to Seattle to meet Cassie and Karen and explore these questions together. After that event, Cassandra and Karen put those folks in a Slack group together. Then they hosted another retreat and another. Today, The Cosmos has more than 5,000 members and many, many more people have heard their name. Their book club was just featured in the New York Times. And in August of this year, 500 of them are going to get together for their first ever summit in New York City. You could go if you want to.
Yes.
Kevin, you know Cassie and The Cosmos well. You've coached them. You're kind of like weaving into their web a little bit.
Just jut myself into the friendship zone.
There you go.
To hang out, like to absorb the good energy.
Did you say jut yourself?
Yeah. Is that weird?
That's an interesting verb. Yeah.
I made it up. All right. It's a Kevin original.
What would you say stood out to you from our conversation with Cassie?
Well, this convo hits home for me, first of all, because Cassie and our families have somewhat similar stories, as we're both children of Vietnamese refugees. So my parents immigrated here in 1975, and my family has stories from coming on helicopters, airplanes, to fleeing on boats, and Cassandra's family story is no different. And I think that kind of that history, that experience of growing up is the soil from which the Cosmos has like grown out of for her. I think we get into that motivation early on and talking about this idea of moving from a survivor mindset to one where you're flourishing and thriving and exploring identity. That's just stuff that really inspired me the first time I met Cassie, and to talk more about it on this interview, that hit home.
Yeah.
From a community building perspective, I think it's special to hear throughout the interview just the collaborative spirit that she and her co-founder Karen have brought to the Cosmos since the beginning. You hear it from how they partnered up with Asian vendors to put on a market, to how they gather feedback from other community members in Slack around what they want to do next, and how they are powering every piece of this upcoming summit by Asian American women and the enterprises that they've started. It's just admirable to see Cassie's commitment to not just get people together, but really build the capacity of a community, like leave this group even stronger, even with more power, even with a stronger economy between the groups. Like there's a real investment that's going on in the people that she's trying to serve. And I think that's rad.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, one of the reasons why you and I both do this work is because we really like working collaboratively. Mm-hmm. And I think like never putting one person like higher up on the rung of the ladder of life than someone else. Like we're all equal and we all can contribute. And I have been so inspired by so many of the people we've interviewed on this podcast for being so radically non-hierarchical. And I love learning about more groups that are operating that way. Yeah, and I love that. I think it's great. So cool. Let's get in it.
Here we go.
All right, Cassie. Kevin and I like to say that you can't fake the funk. Like people who start communities, if you're not passionate about it, you can't like get the fire started if the embers are dead. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to ask you, where does all the motivation come from for starting Cosmos? Like tell me about what motivated you to do this and where that comes from.
I was at a stage of my life when I met my co-founder Karen Mok where I didn't know what I wanted or needed, but I knew that what I was feeling and going through was not it, if that makes sense. And in a way, a really beautiful love story happened when Karen and I met because we were both two Asian women who are living on opposite sides of the country. In fact, still are. She's in San Francisco and I'm in New York.
Hi, Karen.
Shout out all the way over there to Oakland. And so we were actually introduced by a mutual friend, and we met at Spread House Cafe, which is just a hopscotch over.
Yeah, it's like 50 feet from here right now.
Oh, so this is a very like beautiful. Like,
That's also where I met Cassie.
Yeah. Many beautiful things happened there. So she and I got a coffee there in November 2017. And so she was just out here doing the AAJA Accelerator program. And when
What's that? AAJA?
Asian American Journalism Association.
Oh, sick. Okay.
Because she was working on a kind of a media project at the time. And so when we met, our mutual friend said, hey, you guys are both working on like storytelling projects at this time. I think you'll have a lot in common. Get together. I think about 20, 30 minutes into the conversation, we completely blew past the superficial. And we started getting into some of the really nitty-gritty topics that I think were really lurking under the surface and we're waiting for the right context to come out.
Can you say like what some of those were?
We're going there.
Bring me there. Let's do it. Okay.
So just let me lay the landscape a little bit. So this was post-Trump era. We were only about like a year into his presidency. The Women's March was going on. Women's movement was really starting to gain traction nationwide. Time's Up was also happening. And in that landscape, where everywhere I looked, I felt like I didn't have a place to belong. So there were a lot of spaces that were like generalist women's spaces tended to be very white feminism oriented. And whenever I found myself in people of color or even women of color spaces, the validity of the Asian experience was often questioned. I didn't feel affirmed. I didn't necessarily feel safe. And I often had to deal with this like weird mental calculus of like, do I assert myself? Is there even a place here for my story and my experience, especially because oftentimes I think we get stuck in this black and white dichotomy where, where do Asian people fit in that? Large meta question, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the landscape or the backdrop to, when Karen and I met. And so we started digging deeply in our conversation into things like, the Asian and American experience. Like that intersection is so fraught, it's so heavy. There's so many things that we have repressed growing up by virtue of not ever seeing ourselves anywhere, by virtue of, more importantly, not having a space to even talk about it. And so that meeting between me and Karen was the meeting that broke the dam, and we got into everything from like the seeming lack of political engagement and civic engagement within our community. We talked about the lack of representation, not just in Hollywood, which I think is very easy to talk about, but also in like the C-suite and board of directors for companies, whether you have leaders that can serve as mentors or champions for you. We also talked about how difficult it was to approach topics like mental health and sex and intimacy from a culturally relevant standpoint. And so there was no space for that until we created that space for each other. And somewhere in that conversation, one of us just blurted out, what does it look like for Asian women to flourish and thrive? And that question is a juxtaposition to survivorship.
Can you share a little bit about your family and just kind of share that with the audience because it's an amazing story?
Yeah, so my parents are both Vietnamese refugees. They came to the U.S. after the war, but they came through refugee camps in Malaysia. So my mom literally left on a crappy boat, very similar to like what you might have seen in photos of the Syrian refugee crisis. And the boat actually got raided by pirates. There was a story about how she and her family members had basically the only money you could carry that was worth anything in the States was like gold, right? So they ate their gold jewelry so that they could.
Oh my God.
Can I cuss on this? Shit
yeah, go ahead.
So they could shit it out because the pirates raided the boat, and if you had anything on you that was worth anything, they were going to take it. People were drinking their urine because they ran out of water at a certain point, and by the time they made it to Malaysia, and my mom was like a teenager. And then my dad's family, very similarly, also ended up in Malaysia. So they met at a refugee camp, never thought they'd see each other again, eventually made their way to the States. And so my parents came from literally like having this life that they thought where they were going to go on to like high school, college, have these amazing this amazing life in Vietnam, and then the war ends the way it did, and they get thrust into this life that they never thought they would have to
Yeah,
endure.
and like a scarring and traumatic event too. Like that, I feel like I've had such, I mean, I've had such minor challenges in my life, and I'm just like, this modern world, I'm trying to make it through. But to be raised with that perspective is like a very powerful point of view, for sure.
And it's extremely difficult to put words into like how much trauma there is to unpack, especially intergenerational. And then I think you add in the layer of your parents don't even necessarily have like the words to articulate to you, you know, what healing looks like, because healing just feels like a privilege, you know what I mean? Like they just had to survive. And so neither of my parents went to college, came here, they started working right away. They're both like on the younger end of a large crop of siblings. My mom is one of 10, my dad is one of 7.
Whoa, my family's like that too. Yeah. That's leading to interesting wedding planning, as there's like eight aunts and uncles on each side with like kids that also have kids. But there's shorthand, you know, like Obai is like, you just call her Aunt Seven. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It depends on the family. Yeah. I mean, you and I, when we were at Boys Don't Cry bar in Lower East Side, and like I had just met you, I don't know, maybe a week earlier, and our conversation around moving from like a survivor's mentality that, you know, my parents, a similar story, and now they are thriving in their own way, but as a kid of these parents, it's one thing to like grow up with a family that's really trying to optimize for security and safety, and then to reach a point now where I've had the privilege to like be put in a position with, you know, with limited debt, with resources, with a network, and to say, you know, it's not enough. Like, we can do more that involves flourishing and thriving. We can build things, we can start enterprises, we can organize each other, and we can gain, you know, power and push equity in a way that like our parents weren't as much in a position to do so. But it's also hard to communicate that back to like the previous generation, because it's just not the same. Yeah, there's just a disconnect there, and it's understandable. It's just like it is a disconnect.
Yeah.
And I think that's just part of what's like inspiring about the work, which we'll get into more on this that you're doing.
I think that disconnect is so hard, and when you're growing up, you don't even understand how your experience is so different. And at the same time, being a kid, you just want to be the same, right? And as I've gotten older, I think I've also become more, I think, less ashamed and more proud of the challenges that like our parents went through, right? And then like, I just remember like, you know, when you're in 3rd grade, you want to have Lunchables like everybody else. You want to be able to like
Lunchables, cancers in that. Fuck you, Lunchables. Yeah, sorry.
Pizza one looks so good though. Didn't taste.
That's so sad to me that you like guys have like the cuisine of gods. Like Vietnamese cuisine is like godlike, and you're like, I just want those Lunchables so bad.
Things that where like you thought like if I just got X, Y, Z, I could normalize my experience as to everyone else's. But then I remember like in 6th grade, I got to a point where, you know, I surpassed my parents in math and English, you know, and I was at 6th grade level. It was just this really sad moment where I was like, dang, like I'm getting to like pre-algebra geometry, and these things don't make sense to my parents. And, you know, that's a really early age, I think, to realize that like I'm kind of on my own now. And that's what it's been since. And I think at the time I didn't really know how to process it, but that experience is something that I think only first gen kind of kids really understand, and to feel like you have to navigate the world at I don't know, 12, and know that you have the next rest of your life basically to feel that way. It was kind of heavy.
One of the things that Kevin says about Cosmos is that, well, first off, just for context, you've coached Cassie. You guys, Kevin's in deep on the Cosmos. Oh yeah, and they're starting the Vietnam Mafia. Yeah, the Vietnam meetup. Yeah, maybe if you are interested in joining, you can send an email to hi@peopleand.company if you're in New York and you're Vietnamese descent. Come on down. But one of the things that Kevin says is that he's so amazed by the energy of people who are helping you build it, people who are participating, and that's the most remarkable thing that like really stands out for you, is that there was a real need that many people had that others didn't realize. And I just wanted to ask you, we say every community starts with a really clear who and a why. Who were the early people in Cosmos besides you and Karen? Tell me about a few of those folks and how you found them and how you communicated what you were trying to do to them.
When Karen and I got kicked out of cafe, Spread House, this tells you a lot about the type of people we are. We pulled out our phones and we were like, so we set a recurring Google Calendar invite every Sunday, you know, for an hour. Karen and Cass were gonna keep in touch. We didn't know what we were going to create, but we knew that we wanted to keep the conversation going. And so as we had more of those calls, we decided to publish a Medium blog post to share a summary of that conversation we had at Spread House. And the blog post is still up. It's at the bottom of that post, which you guys have seen. There's a call to action in a Google form that basically says, if the question of what does it look like for Asian women to flourish and thrive is radical to you, you've never heard it before, you're thinking like, oh my God, I don't know how to answer that, or like, why have I never even been approached with that question, fill out the Google form and we'll get in touch. And so we sent that out towards probably the end of November of 2017. And we decided to share it on our Facebook pages and a couple groups we were in. We could never have expected the response that we got. I think we got over 200 people who filled out the Google form.
Wow.
Which was shocking because I expected like 5.
Yeah.
So when Karen and I were reviewing the responses, we realized, holy crap, I think we've tapped into a nerve here. We tapped into a larger unmet need beyond like our own experiences. And so being Cass and Karen, we're really intense, scrappy, like let's just hit the road at 100 miles per hour and break shit kind of people.
Great.
We were like, okay, what's the fastest way we can beta test our hypothesis, but also continue the discovery process and explore here. So we decided,
Gotta bring that corporate know-how into the passion projects. I like it.
Yeah, we were like, let's organize. So I think like this was like early December, and we decided like we're gonna host a retreat. We're gonna get people into a house together for 3 days and see what happens. Like I did a lot of research because we wanted to figure out. So the respondents to the Google form were coming from all over the U.S. And we didn't really know where we wanted to host the retreat. And so I remember I created this Google spreadsheet and I literally listed 10 emerging cities that seemed inexpensive. And I did this really manual, like looking up Google flights from all the main cities, LA, SF, New York, which are the biggest hubs for Asian population, to charting the flights to these 10 cities. It was a labor of love for sure. And so finally settled on Seattle. And we sent out an email to like those 200 respondents saying, hey, thank you for your interest. We're going to jump in. Do you want to come on this retreat in Seattle, January 26th to 28th, 2018?
Okay.
Karen and Cass are hosting it, and we're going to explore this question together through workshops and activities that we're putting together. They were not yet put together at the time.
Yes. As all great workshops do not come together.
If you're interested, Venmo $75 at Cassandra.
No way.
Yeah.
For your security deposit. We didn't even know yet how much to like value that experience. So we were like, let's just get the deposit down and we'll send everybody charges for food and the rest of the house later. But that's the commitment. We had 20 people fill up the house. So we basically sold the retreat out to 20 strangers on the internet.
Wow.
I swear only some of them knew us. So like I would say over 60% were complete strangers.
Hand raisers, man.
Yeah.
People raise their hand.
Yeah. And it was insane. And I think the other thing that also really helped was like we did Google Hangouts with every single person that expressed interest.
Why did you do that? Tell me about that.
This is something that has continued to extend throughout like anything that we've sold that was at a higher price point. There are 2, I think, big reasons why we felt like we wanted to and also had to do it. One, there's never been anything like this for our community. Karen and I have been talking a lot about how, like, when Apple created the iPod, that people didn't even know how much they needed or wanted it. And then the magic there was that they figured out how to market it. That's what we were trying to hack. We were like, we don't even know. Like, you're definitely not thinking you need a retreat.
Yeah.
You actually probably don't know what you need because Karen and I didn't know what we needed till we found each other. But we do know that if we can get you on the phone, we can get you talking about your experience, and we can we can paint the narrative of like, can you imagine having this conversation with 19 other people?
Yeah, you can taste the magic.
Yeah, taste the rainbow. Yeah, exactly. And so that's what the intention was. It was like, one, to build credibility and trust via like face-to-face Google Hangout, to begin to paint that picture of what that experience could be like, to be in a room with 20 other women who cared about the same things for 3 days and to dig deep. And that takes a lot of courage, right? And so that was like an investment, a big investment of time that completely paid off because those were also user research interviews.
Yeah,
so
totally.
We were able to come into the day that everyone showed up at the house, we were able to be like, okay, I know a little bit of their story, right? And I know where I want to take them because I too have been there. And I resonate with that. So anyways, these women, they flew in from Denver, LA, SF, New York. So people spent hundreds of dollars on flights, eventually like a couple hundred to cover the house and food and everything. And those 3 days, I kid you not, completely changed my life. It was 20 people, me and Karen. By Sunday morning, we had all cried out of all the Kleenex and toilet paper in the house. Toilet paper was gone. Yeah. No toilet paper left to even cry into. And so
that's a good metric of meaningfulness. It's like there's no paper left in this venue.
None. And we were at the point where we
Dang.
were using our bath towels to wipe our faces.
Oh my God.
And the tears were not all bad, right?
Yeah.
It was like a mix of like, it was just completely emotional, a mix of like never realizing that it was possible to feel just the level of support that we were able to give each other. I'm really proud because Karen and I created this retreat curriculum within a month and also handled all the logistics as two people. One lesson learned though, we will never facilitate a 3-day retreat, just us two ever again. That was so taxing. But some of those activities that we created still to this day are activities that we later on did 2 other retreats last year. And so that weekend, all of those women are still members of the Cosmos. They became our early adopters. They are still friends with each other. We keep in touch. One of them eventually is now like our advisor to the Cosmos. And she's been there day one. Shout out Bessie Chu. And gosh, like the testimonials we got from that weekend, because just the things people were saying about how like they never thought it was possible to feel sisterhood with one another, to feel this deep sense of kinship, to feel like anything truly was possible. After that weekend, that's when Karen and I looked at each other and we're like, I think it's time to get legitimate. Like, you gotta come up with a website.
Yeah, make a website. What a testament to just the power of getting people together. I think there are just some things that maybe some topics, some feelings, emotions that you can't explore without other people. Like my guess is just some of those discussions and stuff, you can't get the same thing from reading a book, from watching a movie, but there's just some stuff that like other people, more so in the same room with some stuff in common and some stuff not, like digging into it and exploring and reflecting, and just the power of like saying something to someone else's face and hearing it said back to you, that you just can't replace that.
A lot of communities do start with a small number of people and a really deep and meaningful touch point. Weight Watchers started with 6 people. They have 30,000 meetings every week. But if you can really get a small team on your side and they really care about the same things as you, what is Cosmos at now? Like, how many people do you guys have on your newsletter? Or like, you guys have a ton of people.
Over 5K now.
Yeah.
Combined with like newsletters, social, our online community, and then like people telling each other. But I'm starting to have this weird like meta out of body experience where like I'll go like to events in New York and more people on the street, and then like they'll be like, oh, have you heard of the Cosmos? Yeah. And then I'll play around like, oh yeah, no.
I just started dating, I'm like talking about my dating life on the microphone, but I just started dating a girl who's Korean American, and I was like, have you heard of the Cosmos? And she was like, yeah. And I bet you if you start measuring all the people that like aren't just on the list, but like know you and know what you're doing, it's probably a lot of people. And that started with 20 people and the high touch point, just like a little pin in a question about the who. And again, I'm like a white girl, so you just like tell me what I don't understand. But one thing that I think is really interesting is that you are bringing together a very horizontal group of like many different people with many different experiences that all are like being labeled Asian, but that's extremely diverse, right? Yeah, how did you guys approach that and think about that?
Asian America itself as a term is very new. It only came about like in the 50s. And I think we often forget that. And also there's so many different waves of immigration. So like people's even experiences of coming to America are so different. And I think one thing that's important to highlight is that when we all come from different contexts and we're all like just trying to survive at a certain point, the type of community we're trying to build really is a privilege, and there is some level of work to even understand why it's important, right? Because I think when you're focused on survivorship, it's like the near term. You have that short-term scarcity mindset thinking, and that's not a bad thing. It's a product of you trying to make it based on what you have with who you have with you. The work of building community is to come together so that we can all expand our perspectives and ultimately the possibility for ourselves. I often use this metaphor of you normalize the 4 walls of what you think is possible for yourself. And what you think is possible for yourself is charted out for you based on who you're around and the context you live in. And so there are 2 ways I think you can go about it. You can either start decorating those 4 walls and get really comfortable with them, do your best, really ramp that up, tell yourself that that's freedom. Or you can keep breaking through and pushing them further and further and further. But you can't do that, I don't think, without community, without people of different perspectives and different approaches and different ways of looking at those walls, surfacing that so that you can create kind of your own philosophy for how you want to break through. Together, we can imagine something much bigger.
So Let's move into what you guys are doing now with the Cosmos. You guys have an online space where you chat with each other, Slack. You have a bunch of different experiences that are physical. So you started with the retreat. You guys have workshops. You have a book club. You're going to do a kick-ass summit soon. You have ambassadors running that in cities around the country. And you also tell stories. But maybe we can start with that Slack group. So you finished the retreat, and as far as I know, you guys made a Slack group, right? You put everybody into that Slack group. Is that right?
After that first retreat, we knew that people wanted to stay in touch. Well, we wanted to stay in touch, right? These are our early adopters. There's so much we wanted to learn from them. So we created a Slack group, and at first it was private in the sense that we only wanted people who had been through this deeper experience with us to join. And so last year, we ended up doing 2 more retreats, one in Joshua Tree in June and one in upstate New York in October. And so every cohort, if you will, was added to the Slack group.
The same Slack group.
Yeah.
Everyone's in the same little zone, big meta zone.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So everyone's in the same private Slack group and has like different channels, right?
Okay.
On top of that, we were also starting to activate, in person. So we launched with 4 hubs, Denver, LA, SF, New York, which was an homage to the women who represented those cities at the first retreat.
Yeah, so you basically had people in those cities that you were like, you're genuine, you know what this is about, and also I've kind of vetted you, you're qualified, I'm going to let you run Cosmos Denver or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Denver, SF, and New York were really the biggest ones. Karen and I ended up doing an LA trip together in June, and so that we activated that city by doing like a big community dinner. And we ended up doing like 60 workshops over the course of last year, like in these 4 cities. It wasn't just me and Karen teaching them. It was us partnering with like...
Wait, am I doing the math right? Is that one every 5 days?
Last May, where Karen and I, between us two, did 10 workshops between SF and New York for mental health awareness as well as APAM.
Y'all get out there. I just think that's part of one of the most impressive things as well. People who want to start a community will hide behind some of the online stuff. I have a bias towards liking the in-person things. And I get there's a role for online community, but there really is a power to getting people together. And yeah, there's something about doing it repeatedly, continuing to show up and giving people a place to show up.
Yeah, I think that it's always been the most important thing for us to get people to connect in real life.
Yeah.
To get face to face and to have the conversations, like where they're able to bear themselves vulnerably. The online layer was there to kind of support, but ultimately, like, we still to this day really put all of our weight into the in-person experiences. And that's also how the book club sprung up, because Carolyn approached the Cosmos and was like, I've always wanted to start a book club for Asian women. Do you guys want to do this together? And we were like, yeah, you want to run it? Like, let's go.
Yeah, let's break this one down. So how does a book club, a Cosmos book club function? Like, what's the framing of that? If I want to go to a Cosmos book club, how does that work?
We've only piloted a formal one here in New York.
Cool.
And it really sprung about because she really cared about reading works by Asian and Asian American authors of the diaspora and really supporting them, right? Because we're in an interesting renaissance moment right now for Asian America where there are more Asian authors writing books than I can even keep up with, right? Like every month I'm like, oh my gosh, there's an onslaught. And this is
when we were younger, it was like Amy Tan.
That's like kind of the heart of it, like, wanting to support so that more of these authors and also the publishing industry itself, which is very white, could understand that there is an appetite for it. Very similar to how people were like selling out or buying out theaters for Crazy Rich Asians. Like, we are in our own way trying to kind of organize it and signal, exactly, that this is important and we care about it. So our book club has actually been in partnership with Asian American Writers Workshop. Like, they have been, contributing venue space and allowing us to also amplify their work because they're an incredible nonprofit that really supports the literary arts for our community. I think the coolest thing, though, about our book club is that wherever possible, we always try to invite the author to come in person.
Yeah.
So the one that was featured in the New York Times was back in April when we had Crystal Hana Kim come in. So our book club was reading her book, If You Leave Us. And even cooler part, Carolyn's sister runs a Korean food pop-up called You Eating, which is a play off of their last name.
Yeah.
And so Irene catered like that book club and made food that literally came from the book. Like, she made dishes, Korean dishes
awesome.
that were mentioned in the book. And then Crystal Hana Kim came in and did like a little bit of like a private Q&A and reading with us. She talked about her context into writing the book and what her process is like. And then I think she literally looked at us and she was like, I've never been in a room where I'm reading to people who look like me. I'm usually on tour, looking at very mixed audiences, or also if I'm in the Midwest, it's a very white audience. And this is so different. I think what's also...
Another thing that you guys are doing that we can mention really fast is you're promoting vendors, specifically women and gender non-binary folks who are Asian who are making products. And it seems like you guys are just not only creating space for conversations, but you're at this point where you're making platforms for people to flourish and
there's
thrive.
definitely a Beyonce long-term play here.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that. What's the vision?
At the end of the day, what we are building is a support system. And not just like, hey, Bailey, I'm going to give you a hug today. But it's a support system of like, you said that you have, your Kickstarter is launching tomorrow. I'm going to show up and donate. I'm going to share it with all my friends. Oh, do you need a mentor? I'm going to connect you to this person. So like a holistic support system of all kinds that at the end of the day really is creating a microeconomy for Asian women and gender non-binary folks to invest in one another. And that's also a very new kind of behavior because for so long, I think we've been in our own lanes by virtue of whether we had to for survivorship or we just didn't know better to look, both ways. But now that we have more connections to each other through like the Slack platforms, through like these in-person communities that we're hosting all over the US and, the summit, which will be the biggest manifestation of it, you can now literally see who's in the trenches with you. And there's so much talent in our community, whether it's entrepreneurs and artists and, people who are investors and makers and arts and crafts and dancers. It's incredible. And so all of us need support of different kinds at different times. And so what we're trying to do is really make that easy. And I think the conversation is really important because sometimes the support you need is not money. It might be like, hey, I'm looking for an Asian therapist. Can you help me out? Or I'm going to Japan. Give me your recs. But other times it really is like, I need your dollars. Or I need a designer. And I want to work with an Asian designer on like this idea that I have. We're trying to facilitate all those different types of support.
Social capital.
Social, economic, political power at the end of the day.
I love that.
Really, and also normalizing the conversation around like valuing yourself and realizing that when you invest in your community, you're investing in yourself and trying to make that super freaking clear because I don't think it necessarily always is.
You guys are doing a lot. You have a big output. How do you make decisions about what you're going to say yes to and what you're going to say no to?
Because I used to be the kind of person where my default answer was yes. Like, I want to help everybody. I want to be there for everyone. I want to respond to every person's email. And it just gets to a certain point where, like, what we have built that's not the best use of my time. It's not maybe the best use of Karen's time. And maybe that's not just the right time either. So as opposed to being a default yes person, I'm learning how to establish, like, boundaries and be default no. And something I'm also really working on lately is like creating more headspace where I'm not just, I think when we were first starting out, there are so many unknowns. There still are a lot of unknowns, but now I feel like I am an expert on me. I'm an expert on how I show up in this space and I'm an expert on the cosmos. And I didn't have that last year. I felt like a blind person walking around and hoping I don't break something. Now that I have that expertise, I've given myself the ability to step back and just stop ingesting so much. So one really big thing that I learned from that is if I want to cultivate my own voice for what this could be, I can't just keep taking in what other people say it should be. I can't just keep like looking for other experts. Like, there's just a certain point where I'm like, I've learned what I could, I think, from others, and now it's like, what do we want? You know what I mean? And that's a really hard question for, a first-gen refugee kid to even think about, right? Because I was like, I never grew up with like, what do I want? It's like, what will make other people satisfied? What will check off the right boxes for them? And so now I have to be default no, because if I say yes to everything, you take me off track of like the vision here. What we're really proud about is like our vision is not an egoistic one of like, this is Cassie and Karen's picture of what Asian America should look like. We really believe in, it's just a term that I know Kevin uses a lot too with you guys, but like we really believe in building with people, not for people. For our Cosmos, so in our Slack group, we have a channel called Summit Advisory Board, and it's an informal group where we ask anybody who wants an opportunity to chime in on whether it's like just drop ideas here, or if we want to just quickly poll people, chime in on what you want. We'll start threads that say like, what are some topics that you want us to explore at Summit? And right now, I think there are like 88 people who are in there. We're going to be promoting it more like over the next couple of months because we want to get like hundreds of voices in there if possible. Like they're telling us what they want. And we're also committed to allowing our community to vote on the workshops that we're going to be hosting. So we have applications open right now, but they're going to have the final say. Because we believe this community, it's not about me and Karen, it's about us. And what do you care about, right? Another cool thing that I'm really proud about is like we're being super transparent about everything that we do at the Cosmos. And we're very willing to like own up to the fact we're gonna make mistakes, hold us accountable, hold us high, help us like get to where we want to go. And so with the summit, like I'm proud to say that like we're bringing in a lot of different perspectives, and the more voices we have at the table, I mean, obviously with some parameters, because otherwise it becomes also chickens running around with their heads cut off. But like in certain areas, like it really helps to have them tell us what they want, because we want to build something that is really valuable at the end of the day for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Otherwise, you're guessing, right?
Yeah.
Guessing doesn't work at scale
Yeah.
super well.
Exactly.
Tell us about, really quickly, anyone who's listening, if you want to know about this summit, what do they need to know? Like, when are the dates? And also, like, why should they come? You know, give it a little hype. Like, why are you excited about it?
Yeah. Imagine you walk into a room. You're maybe a little nervous. And all of a sudden, you look around and you see 499 other women just like you. They've come here to explore the question of what does it look like for us to flourish and thrive. All of your speakers and workshop facilitators are going to be people who look like you. All of the vendors are going to be people who look like you. All of the activations are going to be products made for you. Right, you guys can open your eyes now, but
sounds rad. Where's my queer female version of that? I gotta get on that train.
Yeah, the Quasmos.
The Quasmos. You guys are like, Bailey, could you just dial down ripping me off for like 20%? Yeah. Well, tell me.
It hasn't happened before.
Yeah. You guys are gonna have like 500 people.
Yeah, it's gonna be. The summit is for 500 Asian women and gender non-binary creators. When we say creators, it's more of a mentality than a role. It's someone who wants to use their passions, skill sets, expertise, perspective to create the world that they think they deserve. And so we're bringing people together who want to make the world a better place and also want to make their lives their own, if that makes sense. And it's going to be happening August 25th, which is a Sunday in Brooklyn at 99 Scott, which is a really beautiful venue out in Bushwick. There's going to be an art installation, speakers, workshops, all led by community members. The Cosmos Market, we will have 15 Asian women and gender non-binary creators who are vending their products. Everything from like clothing to stationery to like baked goods. I mean, I don't know what it is yet. Applications are open right now, but I hope there's some baked goods so I can eat them. The summit is something that Karen and I actually talked about at Spread House, like the first day we met. Yes. And so it's like a really beautiful coming together. And the reason why it's so important is we have so rarely seen our community kind of in the spotlight on the metaphorical stage or the physical stage, right? And so for us, it's really important to create this bold statement and to create the biggest container that we've ever created. Like we've done a lot of the in-person, more intimate, like under 50 type of events. There's no more waiting for someone else to give us an opportunity. Like we're going to take the reins and do it. And so we really just want to make a splash. And our hope is that we're also going to change the way that conferences and summits are run. I'm really proud that we started with a design thinking session. We brought everyone on the team into a room with stickies and a whiteboard, and Karen was like facilitating this because she's really good at that stuff. Yeah. We refuse at the Cosmos to just take a template that people have done before and make it our own. For example, is it not traumatizing to pick up your badge and all of a sudden you're like, who am I going to sit next to? What am I going to eat today? What if I have to go to the bathroom? Is anyone going to be my friend? Oh my God, I hope I don't get stuck talking to somebody who I don't like. There's this whole like mental calculus that's happening and you're distracted the moment you get there. And isn't that something that's totally solvable? Yeah. We think so. So we're actually going to be launching what we're calling constellation cohorts. So the moment that, let's say you, Bailey, bought a ticket in June, in July, you'll get an email from us saying, hey, you're matched with 8 other people who are coming to the summit. These are like the 3 things that you guys are going to do together over Google Hangout, kind of like a mini curriculum pre-summit to normalize everyone's experience.
Love the pre-event work. Genius.
How cool is it that you can walk in saying, I already know 8 people, and those 8 people are going to hold me accountable to the goals that I set out for myself for the summit, and they're going to make sure that like I feel supported, and you know and that I step up and I really take full ownership of my experience here and get my money's worth. Any other friends you make on top of that is like gravy, but you are coming in feeling like the sisterhood and solidarity already, and then you just come in for more.
There's this common thread of attention to detail and of picking apart every single piece and seeing how do I, one, flip this on this head so it better realizes the purpose of my community, but also how to take that piece and make it powered by the community.
Yeah. Also, we interviewed this guy named Kyle, who's the CEO of Creative Mornings for the podcast. And he was saying that at headquarters, you're in service of the community. And I feel like you guys are just doing such an amazing job serving people that you care about, being so generous and so thorough. Like the passion is like very clearly in there. And I'm sure people must come to your events and just feel like, damn, what a gift. You know, like it's like a present that you're giving people. And I think the other thing that stands out to me about you is you're just like an amazing leader. Like I asked you about your family and a little bit about your upbringing, but like, where does all this come from for you? Like, what is this like fire in you and this like sense of leadership? Has that always been there for you?
I really feel like I'm giving birth to the version of myself that I've always wanted to be, and I'm not doing it alone. The number one thing that I'm so proud of is that we've built a culture that allows for people to make mistakes but continually feel like they can show up and evolve and become the most authentic, heart-oriented, loving, compassionate, goofy, and talented version of themselves. And the person sitting in front of you today doing this podcast is so different from who I was 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago. I have been evolving at such a high rate. And it is because of this work that I'm doing with the Cosmos.
I don't know how cheesy this is to get, but yeah, after our first chat and then hanging out a little bit more, it's just been inspiring to be around you. And part of it for me is seeing like some similarities in our like history and our family's history and our stories. And then seeing you channel that in a powerful way and channel that story into your professional work and showing up with it and flying that flag and not apologizing for, you know what I mean? Like all of those things, like kind of taking up that whole ball of like, what is your DNA and all of the imprints that have like left itself on you, and then taking the mass of that, jamming it together and being like, I'm going to go radiate this and then channel that power in certain areas with my laser beam to go put on this summit or do this thing. Like it's just been, I don't know, that has motivated me to keep doing, not only keep doing work I do, but reflect on like, yeah, who am I? What has made me right now? And utilizing it, versus like just trying to bury it or say like, oh, that was something, or only use that in a certain context. But yeah, to really take it.
You're owning your context.
Yeah, to own it.
Last question I want to ask you is there any like wish you would want to put out into the world for anyone listening who might want to be like, yo, I love Cosmos, how can I help?
If you are not already a part of the Cosmos and you self-identify as an Asian woman or gender non-binary human being, give us a checkout, jointhecosmos.com, sign up with your email. And all I ask is that you look around the Slack community. You don't even have to say anything. You can just lurk and just feel what's going on in there. Just let those feelings process. Let those words land. And realize that those are real people just like you who are bearing their dreams and their hopes and their fears. And hopefully one day if you feel like you want to share, I would love to read about you in the introductions channel. We definitely need all the support we can in amplifying Cosmos Summit. I am so proud of what we've built, but I also want to acknowledge that it is a huge challenge to create and market something to an audience, that has never seen itself anywhere before. And so by virtue doesn't know exactly what it wants. If you have ever wondered, like, what does it look like for me to flourish and thrive? Can I find success without stability and security? Am I alone? What does it look like to be a leader? And how do I merge my Asian American identity? If any of those questions are like screaming out at you right now and your heart is going boop, 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 buy a ticket. Come. We have a scholarship fund. Reach out to us. We are here for you. Like, make it happen, because I know it will change your life. And yeah, help us spread the word. We have tickets that are on early bird sale right now until end of June. We also have our applications for our workshop facilitators, vendors, and those scholarship applicants. So please apply. We want you there, and we are committed to paying everyone who speaks or leads a workshop. Yeah, because it's all about investing in one another.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
I might put together a little crew.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. Love to help.
Yeah, and we could I'll go eat ice cream together.
Hell yes. Shaved ice. I know the shaved ice aficionado.
I love shaved ice.
Cool. Thank you, Cassie.
Thank
you
you.
are rad. I personally want Cassie to run for public office, but I'm just saying, something's down low.
You didn't hear about that. You didn't hear that part of the interview.
If you guys want to get involved with the Cosmos, whether it's joining a chapter in your area, getting into that dope Slack group that they have, or attending their summit in August, which I wish I could go to, you can find all that information at jointhecosmos.com. I'll also plug their Instagram account because they use it to spotlight dope Asian women doing rad things, people making cool things, writers, creatives, all these rad different folks. And you can check that out at Join the Cosmos. the username at Join the Cosmos, no spaces.
Yeah. You can find out more about us, People and Company, at our website, peopleand.company.
.company.
We are also writing a handbook. Woo! Yeah, it's a book. It will be coming out also in August, a couple days prior to the Cosmos Summit. August, big month.
Yeah, August, big month for us.
I'm currently holding an advanced copy of it, and that's very exciting.
One word, flamient.
One word, flamient. You'll get that later.
You'll get that later.
One word, the book is thick but not too thick.
Yeah, it's very readable.
It's the perfect weight.
Perfect weight. Perfect size.
Weight. Anyways, it's a synthesis of what we've learned from conversations like this, a guide on how to build a community with your people. You can sign up and get notified and get a preview of the book on our website, peopleand.company. Or just say hi to us. Send us an email, hi@peopleand.company.
Yeah, recently we've gotten some suggestions about people to interview on the podcast. And I am very excited about that.
I would accept more suggestees.
Yeah. If you are a suggestee, we like suggestions. So
I'll take that.
Okay, last thing. We've also, I think this whole ask for reviews has been working possibly.
Ooh, yes.
But if you feel like you have the kindness of your soul and you're excited about this interview and you're still hanging on here listening to us.
Or if you just know us personally, this is a real ask.
We're real human beings. We'd like you to review us on the podcast if you feel down. Also subscribing instead of just like downloading each episode. Those things help you in DOS podcast store.
Rating is as easy as scrolling down to the bottom of the podcast app and just hitting that.
It's 5 stars. It's satisfying.
I wasn't telling them which number of stars.
Oh yeah, you choose.
You choose.
If we deserve 2 stars, you give us those 2 stars. I hope that's
I'll
not
accept
true.
the feedback.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us so long.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.